The bridge in the woods. I was 16 the summer it happened. It was supposed to be an ordinary school trip of volunteer camp, deep in the woods, away from civilization. Every year, the school's sports teams participated in volunteer projects, and as a part of the volleyball team, I had no choice but to go. The camp was nestled in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense trees that swayed ominously in the wind, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The eerie silence settled in as soon as the sun disappeared, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the occasional rustling of unseen creatures moving through the undergrowth. The cool night air carried the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, making the entire area feel almost suffocating in its stillness. That year, October had crept in earlier than usual, draping the land in early darkness. By 8 p.m., the only sources of light were the flickering flames from the fire pit and the dim glow of our flashlights. My two closest friends, Jake and Daniel, sat with me around the fire, our boredom growing unbearable. "We need to do something," Jake muttered, tossing a twig into the fire. Daniel, always the adventurous one, grinned. "I heard there's a river nearby, a big one, with an old wooden bridge over it." I raised an eyebrow. "And you just heard this?" "From the camp leader." He smirked. "Apparently, the land belongs to some crazy old guy. They said to stay away, but, how bad could it be?" That was all the convincing we needed. At 16, rules felt like challenges, and the idea of sneaking off into the unknown thrilled us. So, with nothing but our flashlights and reckless curiosity, we set off. The walk wasn't long, but the deeper we went, the quieter it became. The usual sounds of chirping crickets and rustling leaves faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. We reached the river within 10 minutes, and sure enough, there stood the bridge, a towering wooden structure that stretched across the dark water. "Wow," Jake whispered. "It's bigger than I thought." It was old but sturdy, its planks weathered from years of exposure. The thought of something so ancient standing alone in the woods sent a shiver down my spine. We decided to explore underneath it. The beams beneath the bridge cast long shadows, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and moss. That's when we saw them two distant headlights, piercing through the trees. A low rumble in the distance caught my attention. It was faint at first, blending into the whispering wind through the trees, but then it grew louder, steady, relentless. A set of headlights flickered between the trunks, cutting through the darkness like a predator's gaze. A truck. "Get down!" Daniel hissed. We ducked beneath the bridge, our hearts pounding. The vehicle rolled onto the wooden planks above us, the sound of its tires groaning against the old wood. "Shh," I whispered, barely breathing. The truck came to a slow stop right above us. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the driver's door creaked open. A heavy thump followed as some stepped onto the bridge. "I know you're out there." The voice was deep, rough, laced with something dangerous. "I see you." I exchanged panicked glances with Jake and Daniel. The man's footsteps were slow, deliberate. A beam of light cut through the gaps in the wooden planks, scanning the ground beneath the bridge. He was searching. "Come on out," he called, his voice almost teasing. "I just want to talk." I pressed my back against the damp earth, trying to become invisible. The light moved closer, closer. My pulse roared in my ears. Then, silence. Had he left? I didn't dare move. Jake's hand gripped my wrist, his fingers ice cold. Then, a sound sent a bolt of fear through Metha's sharp scrape of metal against wood. A knife. I forced myself to look up. Through the slats of the bridge, I saw him, a tall figure silhouetted against the night sky, holding something long and sharp. "Last chance," he murmured. "Come out now, and I won't hurt you." A beat passed, then another. My breath hitched as I strained to hear any sound, any clue that he had truly left. The air was thick with tension, the silence stretching unbearably. Then, at last, his footsteps retreated, slow and measured, as if he were savoring the moment. The beam of his flashlight hesitated before sweeping away from us, casting flickering shadows that made my skin crawl. A moment later, we heard the truck door slam shut, followed by the low rumble of the engine. We stayed frozen, listening as the truck's headlights faded into the distance. Only then did we exhale, our bodies shaking. "We need to go," Daniel whispered. We crawled from under the bridge, careful not to make a sound. But as we moved towards the trees, something made me glance back. And that's when I saw him. He was standing by the truck, watching us. His face was obscured by the shadows, but I could see his mouth twisted into a grin. A slow, deliberate wave followed. I ran. My friends followed, our breaths ragged as we sprinted through the woods. Branches tore at my skin, but I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was putting as much distance as possible between us and that man. When we finally reached camp, we collapsed onto the cold ground, gasping for air. No one spoke. The next morning, we told the camp leader what had happened. He paled, rubbing his temples. "The owner of that land," he said slowly, "has a history. He's been arrested before for assault." A chill ran through me. I thought of the knife, the flashlight, the voice promising that he wouldn't hurt us. We had barely escaped. That night, I lay awake in my tent, listening to the rustling trees, each whispering gust of wind, carrying the lingering feeling that unseen eyes were still locked onto me from the darkness beyond. Every snap of a twig sent my heart racing. Because somewhere out there, beyond the safety of our campfire's glow, I knew he was still watching.